In the last review, I went on a rant about sound engineering, and thanks to the Spanish, I get to do it again. More importantly, we also have our first Eurovision winner potential in this video, so that is really, really exciting. Today, we're going to be talking about Spain, Malta, and Norway. But before we get into that, make sure you have subscribed to the channel. Make sure you've liked this video. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow Jay, my editor, on Twitter if you like. And don't forget, you get videos a day early and you get thanked at the end of the video if you subscribe to the Patreon. Without further ado, Spain, it is your time. And I do want to talk about a horrific robbery first, not from this year, but from last year. I said that Blanca Paloma would get into the top 3 of Eurovision 2023, and I was quite wrong. What this meant was that for the first time ever after Eurovision, the Spanish fans were angry, and I actually agreed with them. I found myself in the weird position of being on the same side as the Spanish fans. That's never meant to happen. In any case, with that in mind from last year, I actually had really quite high hopes for Benidorm Fest. I had it in A tier of my national final tier list video, and I think it would be best if we just get right into it, and I'll set out a few of our characters here. First up, we have Nebulosa with their song Zora. Now, Nebulosa actually previously auditioned for Una Voce per San Marino in, well, San Marino, and they didn't even make it to the semi-finals. This is a national final where more than 100 artists make it to the semi-finals. Well, artists, and Nebulosa didn't even make it. But here they are at Benidorm Fest, so good luck to them. When it comes to their song Zora, which means slut or vixen in Spanish, you can sort of see it as like a retirement home Chicholina a little bit. The lyrics cover a lot of the same themes, and it has the same kind of underlying core message. The lyrics essentially amount to, no matter what you do as a woman, you are completely fucked because people will judge you no matter what. Therefore, you should just embrace life anyway. Enjoy it, because who gives a shit what anyone else thinks? I need to stop swearing in this video. That's like 3 bleeps that Jay is gonna have to do already. Sorry, Jay. Seriously though, the song and performance of this was ridiculously camp. I mean, the title of the song, camp. The dancers taking off their suits to reveal their almost bare backsides. Camp. The fact that a Eurovision TikToker was so outraged by this performance that he made a TikTok condemning it. Camp. Now, this song went down really well, both online and in the room, and the 99% male audience gleefully sung along slut, 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 slut in the correct place, so well done to them. Seriously, I don't know what it was with the ticket sales at Benidorm Fest, but how did they end up selling every single ticket to a man? Like, I have looked at audience shots, and I spotted like 3 women the entire night in an audience of literal thousands. Next, we had the pre-show favorite, and that was Dos Extraños by San Pedro. This is a really emotional ballad. It's done in a style known as bolero. This is a really beautiful song. There's no getting away from it. But I do just have one gripe, which is, why did he have those dancers in the background? They totally distracted from the performance, in my view. And you had this really beautiful song that requires a certain kind of staging to succeed. We saw this with Salvador Sobral winning Eurovision in 2017. When you have a song like this, you have to focus everything in on it. You have to make the stage as small as possible. You have to focus everything on the performer and the emotion of the lyrics and their voice. For me, this performance did that. Those distractions took away from the performance rather than added to it. In any case, dancers aside, this is a guy who took 94 out of 96 possible points from the jury in the semi-final, so you had to consider him a big favourite for the win. Angie Fernandez was my personal favourite with her song Se Quien Soy. This is a kind of Melody Festival and does Paramore kind of vibe for a song. It's a song that is straight out of the Thomas Gison, Dino Medan Hodzic school of bangers, and I felt a bit of a cold wind as I said that, to be honest. But as much as it hurts me to say this, because it's a Thomas Gison song, and as we all know, he's the devil, this was my favourite song of the selection. Pretty comfortably. It's a really great song, performed really well by Angie, and to be honest, I thought it was excellent. And also, we shouldn't forget, while I do joke about the songwriters here, Angie is actually listed as a songwriter on this. This doesn't fall into the criticism I've had of songs by these songwriters before where they're inauthentic or whatever else. This had the artist input. Sure, she had the help, but her voice is in there too. This isn't some plastic piece of rock that has been thrown at an artist and sort of tossed out into the world in the hope it wins a selection. Ultimately, there is a tweet that always comes to mind when I think about this, which is that Thomas Gson has signed some kind of deal with the devil where he writes 15 terrible songs, but the 16th one is amazing. This is the 16th song because it's great. Before we move on, a couple more to get in here. We have Almacour, whose song Brillas Patino was performed with enthusiasm. I mean, his vocal was closer to Albanian Wreck-It Ralph than it was to Blanca Paloma, but at least he was having a nice time. Then we had Jorge Gonzalez, who was overshadowed slightly by the fact he claimed in an interview that though fat phobia was a problem, he was also discriminated against for being handsome. The other thing about this song is that the hook of this song really sounds like Adrenalina by Senate. And ever since I've thought about that, I have not been able to unhear it. Finally, we have Sophia Cole, who dressed as a mushroom and appeared to have vajazzle on her teeth. Seriously, this was a wardrobe choice I just could not understand because it just made her look like she had really bad teeth. Fittingly, in the final, she added the line, "I'm in the final, baby, and I'm here to stay." That was actually very apt because in the final is exactly where she stayed. Overall, this meant we had a fairly decent set of songs, but we have to be honest here. This was nowhere near the level of last year. If you look at songs like AR by Blanca Paloma and Quero Arder by Agone and, of course, Non C'entrerà by Vico, these songs are so far above the entire field. And unfortunately, the show's production declined to match. It was noticed by the media, even just after the semi-finals, that the sound production was off for everyone. The organisers even felt the need to address it because they were being asked so many questions. This meant that these artists really weren't being done justice when it came to the time for their performances. There's more examples of this as well. I mean, look at the stage last year and then look at the stage this year. This is before we get onto, in my opinion, the most egregious technical failure. During Almacour's performance in the final, you can see, we'll put them side by side on screen now, a bunch of the effects that were in his performance for the semi-final did not function. He had a whole series of technical failures, which then the hosts only disclosed to the watching public as the voting was closing. He was not allowed to perform again, and because of that, the public voted on a faulty performance that they did not know was faulty. In my opinion, this is so unprofessional from RTVE, and it shows a real lack of respect for the participants. This decision rightly riled up the crowd, who loudly booed, and they were right to do so because this was ridiculous. To be honest, I was kind of ready for this because when Blanca Paloma did badly, the broadcaster made the inexplicable decision to replace the head of delegation with the woman who gave us this. Just do it for your I kind of expected things to go downhill after that. At the same time, I am really sad because, to be honest, Benidorm Fest was one of my favourite national finals last year. And it just feels, and I'm sure the Spanish fans will be feeling this too, it feels like the show took a really big step back this year. And that's a shame because there is something really special that was being built that, in my opinion, is now at risk. With that said, we did have a winner at the end of the night, and that winner was Nebulosa with Zora. Anyone who said they were expecting this outcome before the semi-finals is definitely lying to you. Was it the expected outcome? Definitely not. Is it the funniest possible outcome? Absolutely. On a musical level, I do think it's totally inexplicable, but I will admit that since the show, I have kind of come to enjoy this song. It's never going to be my favorite, but I think it adds something that Eurovision needs. It will enhance the show, and underneath it all, there is a really important message here. So actually, the more I think about it, I kind of get more behind it. We should also say that this song is already clearing some of the hurdles that were potentially set for it. There was a worry that the EBU would not allow the name Zorra because it could be considered vulgar in Spanish. The EBU have already indicated they will not be asking for any change of the lyrics, which is a massive boost. Overall, I think we have a song here that has fan favorite written all over it. And while I don't think it's going to do very well on the scoreboard in May, and while I'm sad to be losing a big favorite of mine, like Angie Fernandez, I have to say, overall, good choice, Spain. From one national final, we're going to move on to another because now we need to talk about Malta. Malta seemed to be under some kind of effort this year to cram as many bizarre and totally inexplicable features into its national final as possible. I'm going to go through some of the weird, wonderful rules, well, not very wonderful rules of this national final, starting with the fact that they kept the rule. If you watched my iceberg video, the rule which meant that the leading favourite last year got disqualified, they still have that. Basically, you're not allowed to promote your song on social media in any way at all before the shows. Secondly, we had this bizarre set of heats in November for some reason, and they set them up in such a way that all of the songs were considered together once all of the semi-finals were completed. This meant that you could end up with this ridiculous situation where every single song in this semi-final did not qualify. I just want to take a moment to think about the artists, right, who were in that semi-final. Imagine you have been preparing for months. You've given this performance all you've got, only for the broadcaster to turn around and say, all of you, every single one of you, you all sucked, you should all go home, never come back, you're a bunch of losers. I don't know how I deal with that as an artist, so my thoughts and prayers are with everyone who was in this semi-final. In any case, it's ridiculous things like this that make me love national final season so much. There are just so many crazy things going on all the time in every single show, and that's part of the reason why I love making these review videos as well, because there is just so much mad stuff to share, and for months there is just going to be more and more and more and more crazy things, to the point where I'm going to find it difficult to keep up. And the great thing is, I'm not even done yet with Malta, because there was one more absolutely bizarre decision they made as well. They had one of the weirdest jury versus televote splits in the final I've ever seen. 22.2 recurring percent public vote, 77.7 recurring percent jury votes. We were off to a surreal start, but luckily our hero, Matt Black, was here for his third attempt at MESC to come and win it all. Jay, play up by Matt Black. By the way, Jay is the 5th top listener of all time for that song. I'm slacking, I'm only the 9th top listener of all time. So sorry, Matt, I'll work harder this year. As for his performance, in the semi-finals, he ate a banana on stage. In the final, he rode a giant banana on stage. Honestly, I love this man. I love this. This man's mind is unstoppable. He is destined for Eurovision. All he just has to do is keep going, and he's going to get there eventually. He won the televote this year. It is written in the stars. It's happening. I'm going to help make it happen. Actually, I can't run a PR campaign because that's banned under the rules, isn't it? Okay, Matt, I will not run a PR campaign for you, but I will be your #1 cheerleader. Unfortunately, though, this was not his year, and he won the televote, but since it was only worth 22.2%, didn't matter all that much. Instead, Sarah Benici won. Now, I would have done the thing I usually do where I sketch out some characters among the field, but to be honest, this was a national final so nondescript that it just isn't worth your time. Don't worry about it. On to the winner. Sarah Benici's song Loop came well clear with 12 points from all but one of the juries and second in the public vote. Here's a quick clip of it now. I'm a man with a bit of bad things on. Sarah's performance was accomplished, but unfortunately for me, there are a few problems, so I'm going to talk about them. Firstly, Loop is quite a generic pop song, which means inevitably it's going to be competing with several other countries for the same voters. Luxembourg is another country that's already in this position, and there's more coming as well. Secondly, and this is going to probably descend into a rant, but can we please stop it with the dance break trope that has started since Chanel in 2022. Yes, I get it. Dance breaks are fun, but please, nothing you do will ever be as good as Chanel's is. Either make it an amazing dance break or don't bother. We've seen it in national finals this year. We saw it in Norway with Aya, in this show with Sarah Benici. We saw it last year at Eurovision with Noah Carell and with Brunette. And it's like, okay, fine, you did a dance break. They're never going to be as good as the original, and everyone remembers the original, which means you will be compared to it. Just don't bother. We should say, this isn't Sarah Benici's fault. I just find this kind of imitation to be a little bit uncreative, and sadly, the song matches that same energy for me as well. Don't get me wrong, she's clearly a really talented musician and performer, and executing those steps to perfection while performing the song shows just how much talent she has. I just don't think this is the song that showcases that to the fullest. Unfortunately for Malta and for Sarah, what this means is I think this song is going to have a really tough time getting to the final this year. And I think if it does make it through, it's going to be very much rooted down the lower end of the scoreboard. Does it have a chance? Yes, but I really fear it's going to be forgotten and end up with a similar fate to the busker last year, who were robbed, by the way. Their 3-point finish last year is closer to where I expect Sarah to end up. Now it's time for me to say the words potential winner for the first time this season, because it is time to talk about Norway, and I am going to try and stay on script and get through this in the way I want to, because I am so excited about this song, but bear with me if I go off on a few tangents. Starting with the national final, I like to think of the 3 Scandi national finals as like siblings. Sweden is the successful one. It has the mansion, it has the car. Sweden is the sibling that gets bragged about by the parents at the family events. Norway, meanwhile, is the slightly zany one. They've kind of ended up on the same track as Sweden, and they've gotten some of the success, but they've picked up some weird ideas along the way. Denmark is the family embarrassment that gets locked in the cupboards when family are around because they keep setting things on fire. What this means is that MGP in Norway, of those 3 shows, is definitely my favorite. It has the same high production value, or just about as high a production value, as Melodifestivalen does in Sweden. But the Norwegian public are just a little bit more open to looking outside of the box. That said, they have had for some years a strong preference away from the Norwegian language and a strong preference towards certain genres of music. Further to that, I also appreciate that Norway puts the power in people's hands when it comes to the voting. This is actually going to become really important in this section of the video in a bit, so bear this in mind. In Norway, 60% of the votes come from the public, 40% is a jury. There's been lots of published material over the last year talking about how much Norway hates juries and how much the head of delegation in Norway hates juries. It paid off for them on this occasion. I'm going to explain why in a minute. There are also some other slightly weird features of MGP that I'm not as much of a fan of. The big one is autotune. Artists are allowed to use a certain amount of autotune on their voices during their performances at MGP. For me, this kind of defeats the point of a live performance, and also it sets them up for failure. Because great, if you can hit all the notes with autotune at MGP, fine. What happens when you get to Eurovision? You don't have that luxury anymore and you have to hit all the same notes. You've set an expectation which is too high and one you won't be able to meet. It's setting up artists for failure. With all of that in mind, I'm going to talk to you about the 3 main competitors for the win this year at MGP, because realistically there only ever was 3. Firstly, the obvious one, which is Kano with their song Dam Diggy Da. You may remember that Kano won the televote at Eurovision in 2019 with Spirit in the Sky. I may get a little bit of flack here for what I'm about to say about this song and about Kano, but bear with me. To be clear, this is not a bad song. It's not as good as their previous efforts, but it's not a bad song. And the live really added something to it. You have amazing vocals with Kano that you can always rely on to lift the performance when required. Here's the thing, it was still clearly the weakest of their 3 efforts to go to Eurovision. This song kind of feels like they got it mostly written and then realized they had to shoehorn in some yoiking somewhere, so they just kind of shoved it at the end of the chorus and hoped it worked. It didn't feel integrated and together in the way that Spirit in the Sky did, and what you ended up with, in my opinion, was a performance that was quite disjointed. We should say at this point that Kano have actually really struggled for chart success, both inside Norway and outside, with the exception of their efforts for Eurovision. Their songs haven't really made a mark on the charts at all. Their album only made it to number 30 on the Norwegian albums chart and failed to reach a top 40 anywhere else, and it really feels like the momentum has stalled. They've tried to get it going again with MGP, but it just feels like it hasn't happened. None of this is to say that their live performance wasn't great, because it was. And Alexandra's vocals were amazing, as they always are. I just wonder whether this setup is serving any of the members of this group particularly well anymore. And I wonder, to be honest, whether they would be better served looking at other projects. Secondly, we had whatever the hell this is. I am your superhero, my superhero, my superhero. This is one of the most divisive songs for obvious reasons. Erica Norwich and Super Rob brought us their song My AI, which is a story about a girl falling in love with a robot. How original. The robot, by the way, Super Rob, was actually Gaute Ornason, who was one half of Subwoofer, who participated in 2021. Now, I don't know what it is with Gaute and these increasingly weird outfits, whether he has like a wardrobe full of extremely specific Halloween costumes he's trying to get a second use out of. But Gaute, you do realize you don't have to be in a weird suit to perform on stage. You can just go up yourself. Just a thought. As for the song, was it catchy? Yes. Is it one of the most horrible things I've ever heard in my life? Also, yes. As a piece of ultra distilled, like bubblegum hyperpop, it does kind of do its job, which is to burn into your brain after 3 minutes and stay there for days and days and days afterwards. Seriously, this is tormenting me. I cannot get this song out of my head. It's been weeks. I'll just be going about my life when suddenly it's there and I hear it. It is tormenting me. I can't escape it. Please send help. Send me to a facility, something, I beg, just to make this go away and never come back. As for this performance, I realize this advice might not apply to most Euro fans, but let me just say one thing. If your girlfriend ever asks you, why am I so ugly? Do not, under any circumstances, reply, you're not ugly, you're smart, talented, and have abilities to make the world better. That will make things 50,000 times worse. Do not answer it like that. It's one of those ones. It's just like, would you still love me if I was a worm? It's a trap. Anyway, relationship advice and terrible robot songs aside, let's talk about the song that actually won this show, that in my opinion could win the Eurovision Song Contest, and that is Overham by Gaute. And I apologize for the pronunciation. I am too excited to beat around the bush, so I'm going to quickly talk about the result, and then I'm going to tell you about how amazing this song is. Gaute won the show by 5 points from Kano. Had it been a 50-50 split, Kano would have won the show instead. This is because Kano comfortably won the jury, but Gaute won the televote by a significant margin as well. This meant because the televote was more powerful than the jury, like I said, 60-40 split, Gaute won overall. There's so much good I want to say about this song. Like, I think I could rant about this song for hours because it's amazing. But the one thing we should say first is they actually had to change the lyrics in the week of the final. This was because the lyrics originally came from a song that was about 1,000 years old, like an old Norse song. The thing is though, both with the old lyrics and the new lyrics, the meaning of the song doesn't actually change. In the words of the band, the song is about a young woman who has a curse placed on her. She goes through many challenges and injustices, but by upholding justice and goodness, she frees herself of the curse. From the meaning of these lyrics, I think that means we can add this to the Which list. This is Which song number 3 of the season. We had Ireland, we had Slovenia, now we have Norway. That is 3 witches, everyone. And if I'm right about Poland, and you'll know this before this video comes out, we may be about to get a 4th as well. Listening to the studio version of this song, it's a really incredible blend of metal and folk and electronic elements. But the thing that really sticks out is the vocal. Now, the vocal, to be honest, you hear it and think, there is no way someone can do this live. And then Gunhild Sundli shows up to the show and does this. I have been listening to this song over and over and over again because I just adore this performance. I think it's incredible. I'm completely in love with it. I think the vocals are amazing, and I think it represents a real change in how Norway is viewing Eurovision, in the kinds of music that they are sending. Moments like this kind of feeling is part of why I love Eurovision so much. It introduces me to something completely new in a language that I would never usually listen to music in. I'll come onto the language thing in a minute because that is actually very important in the context of Norway and Eurovision as well. There's not much I can say that will do justice to just how amazing the performance was. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it now. It grabs your attention from the very first second. It holds it until the very last. It looks great as is. You don't actually need to change the staging. In my opinion, they could take the staging from MGP and just stick it on the Eurovision stage and bang, you have yourself a winner contender off the bat. If the Norwegian broadcaster plays this right, they could have a winner on their hands, and that means a lot of very expensive hotel rooms in Oslo next year for all of us. Seriously, if anyone wants to buy a kidney, I have a spare and I have some hotel rooms to pay for, so please, offers in the comments. The one last really important thing I want to talk about here, the fact this song is in Norwegian. Norway is singing in Norwegian at Eurovision for the first time in 18 years. For context, this isn't just them, this is a Scandinavian problem. Since 2000, there have been 2 entries in total that have been sung in Scandinavian languages from Norway, Denmark, or Sweden. If this song does well, and it will do well, I think it opens a massive potential door for artists singing in Scandinavian languages, not just in Norway, but across the entirety of Scandinavia. To conclude on this one, then, I really think you have every ingredient here. You have the voice, you have the song, you have an incredible staging, something that's going to capture people, something that's unique. Nothing else is going to be like this in Eurovision this year. It has its own niche that no one else is going to touch. And because of that excellent vocal, and because of that striking staging, it has the potential with the juries as well as the televote. That is why we have to say Norway is a contender to win Eurovision this year. Needless to say, at the time of filming, this is number 1 in my ranking. I'm so excited to see this live on stage in May. I think it's going to be incredible, and I think it's going to blow people away. If you haven't seen the full performance already, I really recommend you go and watch it. And since we're right at the end of the video, now is the perfect time to do that. But hold on for 2 more minutes while we finish off. I just feel like the stars have aligned for this song. I think there is an amazing opportunity for it, and please, please let the people of Europe and let these juries appreciate it as much as I do, because it would be amazing to see this song right up at the top of the scoreboard. I'm now feeling the need to listen to this song on loop for half an hour and kind of bounce off the walls of my apartment a bit, so I'm going to go do that. In the meantime, make sure you've liked this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you follow me on social media. Next week, we're talking about Ukraine, Estonia, and Croatia. If those national finals go well this week in Estonia, then there are going to be a lot of great things to talk about, so I'm really excited for that. By this time this video comes out, you'll know if it's gone well in Estonia or not. In the meantime, while I cannot wait to share my thoughts with you on those, for today, that is everything. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.